You spend 4 hours a day finding food. The rest of the time is yours. No boss. No rent. No alarm clock deciding when your day begins. For roughly 290,000 years, this was simply what it meant to be human. Then, something changed. You started planting seeds instead of gathering them. You started staying in one place instead of moving with the seasons. And historians used to call this the greatest leap forward our species ever made. But was it? Let's rewind. Around 10,000 BCE, in a region called the Fertile Crescent, small bands of humans began domesticating wheat and barley. This is the moment textbooks call the agricultural revolution. It's taught as the turning point where humanity finally got smart, where we stopped wandering and started building. Here's the problem. The skeletons say otherwise. Anthropologist Jared Diamond called agriculture the worst mistake in the history of the human race. That's not a metaphor. He meant it literally, and the evidence backs him up. Bioarchaeologist George Armelagos spent decades studying human remains from before and after the shift to farming. His research on skeletal populations found something startling. Average height dropped by several inches in some regions. Bone density declined. Signs of malnutrition, like enamel defects in teeth, became far more common after populations switched to farming. Why would growing your own food make you weaker? Because a hunter-gatherer diet was wildly diverse. Nuts, roots, dozens of plant species, seasonal meat. A farmer's diet was the opposite. Just 1 or 2 crops, eaten every single day. When that crop failed, there was no backup. Nature had once given ancient humans a buffet. Farming handed them a single plate and told them not to drop it. Think about what that actually means for a moment. You wake up, you eat the same grain you ate yesterday and the day before, and you will eat it again tomorrow because it's the only thing growing in your field. Anthropologist James Sussman has spent years living alongside the Jew/Honsi people of the Kalahari, one of the last remaining hunter-gatherer societies on Earth. His observations echo a famous 1963 study by Richard Lee, who tracked how many hours the Jew/Honsi actually spent acquiring food. The number was startling, around 15 hours a week. Not 15 hours a day, a week. Compare that to a farmer who works from sunrise to sunset every single day with no season off because crops don't wait and neither does hunger. So if farming meant worse health, worse diet, and more labor, why did humans do it at all? This is where the twist comes in, and it's not the one you expect. Ancient humans didn't choose agriculture because it was better. They got trapped by it. Political scientist James C. Scott, in his research on early agricultural states, describes how farming created something hunting and gathering never could. A surplus. Extra grain sitting in one place. And a surplus needs guarding. A surplus can be stolen. A surplus can be taxed. Suddenly, you needed walls. You needed someone in charge of the grain stores. You needed rules about who owns which patch of land. Hierarchy wasn't an accident of farming. It was a direct consequence of it. And once a community committed to farming, going back became almost impossible. A hunter-gatherer band can pack up and follow the herds. A farming village cannot simply abandon its fields, its stored grain, its permanent shelters. The population had already grown to depend on the food surplus. There were now more mouths than the old hunting and gathering lifestyle could ever feed. Archaeological sites like Abu Hureyra in modern-day Syria show this shift happening in real time. Layer by layer, researchers found evidence of wild plant gathering, slowly giving way to cultivated rye. The transition wasn't sudden. It crept forward, generation by generation, each one slightly more locked in than the last. Let's reconstruct what that actually looked like. Picture a small settlement beside a river, sometime around 9,500 BCE. The first generation plants a few rows of wild wheat, just to supplement their usual foraging. It works. The harvest is good. The next generation plants a little more. By the third or fourth generation, something has quietly shifted. Nobody remembers exactly when it happened, but foraging skills are fading. Fewer people know which roots are safe to eat, which berries ripen in which season. The knowledge that once meant survival is being replaced by knowledge of soil and rain and grain storage. Then a drought hits, and this generation, unlike their ancestors, has nowhere else to go. No backup food source scattered across a wide territory. Just one field, and a sky that isn't cooperating. This is the trap. Not a single bad decision, but a slow narrowing of options, one generation at a time, until turning back is no longer possible. And it wasn't just diet and freedom that suffered. Farming also meant living in permanent settlements, packed closely together, often alongside livestock. Skeletal and dental evidence from early agricultural sites shows a rise in infectious disease. Crowding brought new pathogens. Proximity to animals brought new ones still. Some researchers link this period to the earliest chapters of diseases like tuberculosis and measles jumping into human populations. There's another cost that rarely makes it into the history books. Time itself changed shape. A hunter-gatherer's day was unpredictable, but it was theirs. A farmer's day belonged to the season. Planting had a window. Harvesting had a window. Miss either one, and the whole year could unravel. For the first time, humans were living by a calendar instead of by feeling. Childhood changed too. Foraging bans tended to space births several years apart, partly because carrying more than one small child while walking long distances was exhausting and impractical. Farming removed that constraint. Settled life meant children could be born closer together, and more hands were always useful in the fields. Population grew faster than ever before, even as each individual, on average, grew weaker and sicker. So here's the uncomfortable question. If farming made people shorter, sicker, and forced them to work longer hours for less varied food, why does modern history frame it as pure progress? Because eventually, agriculture did produce something. Hunting and gathering couldn't. Enough surplus food to support people who weren't farmers at all. Builders, record keepers, rulers, eventually scientists and writers, and yes, whoever is narrating a video for you to watch on a screen right now. Farming was miserable for the individual in many measurable ways, but it was extraordinarily good at producing more humans and more complex societies. Evolution doesn't reward comfort. It rewards what survives and multiplies. A farming village, however unhealthy its individual members, could outpopulate a foraging band 10 to 1. In the long run, numbers won, even if health lost. Now think about your own life for a second. You probably wake up to an alarm instead of your body's natural rhythm. You probably eat the same handful of foods on repeat, shaped less by what's seasonal and more by what's convenient, or cheap, or fast. You likely spend far more than 15 hours a week acquiring the resources you need to live. And most of that time isn't even spent getting food directly. It's spent earning money, so you can buy food someone else grew. In a strange way, you're still living inside the same trap that closed around your ancestors 10,000 years ago. More structure, more stored resources, more hierarchy to manage it all, and very little way of stepping back out, even if some part of you wants to. The agricultural revolution wasn't the moment humanity got smart. It was the moment humanity got stuck in a system so productive that nobody could afford to leave it, even as it made daily life harder for almost everyone inside it. You spend most of your waking hours earning the means to eat. Your ancestors, 10,000 years ago, made a trade they didn't fully understand, and you are still living inside the deal they struck.